I don't have all day. Take this trash and bring me a fresh glass, and this time make sure it's actually cold." The woman didn't say please, didn't say thank you. She just thrust the garbage into the black woman's hands like she was a servant and turned back to her phone. Captain Renee Mitchell stood in the aisle of the first-class cabin, the trash still in her hands, her jaw tight, taking one slow breath through her nose. The passenger, a blonde woman in her 40s wearing a Hermes scarf, waved her hand dismissively without looking up, already scrolling through her emails like the interaction was beneath her attention. What she didn't know was that Captain Renee Mitchell wasn't a flight attendant. She was the pilot who'd be flying the plane, and in about 3 minutes, she'd be making an announcement that would change everything. A white passenger shoved her empty champagne glass and used napkins into a black woman's hands, assuming she was a flight attendant, and demanded she hurry up and clean this mess. Renee Mitchell, 39, had been flying commercial aircraft for 16 years. She'd started in the Air Force, logged over 6,000 flight hours, earned her captain's stripes at age 31, and for the past 3 years had served as a senior check captain for Delta Airlines, meaning she didn't just fly planes, she evaluated and trained other pilots. She was one of fewer than 150 black female captains in the entire United States. She'd worked twice as hard as most of her peers to get here. And she was tired, so tired, of being mistaken for anything other than what she was. But it happened constantly. Passengers assumed she was a flight attendant. Gate agents assumed she was lost when she entered the cockpit. Other pilots, especially older white men, sometimes questioned her credentials. And every single time, Renee had to prove herself. Today was supposed to be simple. She was flying Delta Flight 1522 from Atlanta to Houston, a route she'd flown hundreds of times. She'd arrived at the gate early, done her pre-flight checks, reviewed the weather, and coordinated with her first officer, a young white man named Daniel Cooper. Everything was ready. She'd left the cockpit briefly to do a visual inspection of the aircraft from the cabin, a routine check she always did before departure. She was walking through first class in her full captain's uniform, 4 stripes on her shoulders, wings on her chest, Delta captain's hat in her hand, when it happened. A passenger in seat 2A, a white woman, mid-40s, expensive clothes, designer luggage, had looked up, seen Renee, and immediately snapped her fingers. "Excuse me, miss." Renee paused. "Yes." The woman held out an empty champagne glass and a crumpled napkin. "Take this." Renee blinked. "I'm sorry." "I said take this," the woman repeated, her tone sharp with impatience. "I don't have all day. Take this trash and bring me a fresh glass, and this time make sure it's actually cold." She thrust the garbage into Renee's hands before Renee could respond. Renee stood there frozen, the sticky champagne glass in one hand, the used napkin in the other. The woman didn't even look at her uniform. Didn't see the 4 stripes. Didn't see the captain's wings. She just saw a black woman in the aisle and assumed she was there to serve. Renee felt the familiar burn of humiliation rising in her chest. But she kept her face neutral, her voice calm. "Ma'am," she said quietly, "I'm not a flight attendant." The woman finally looked up, her expression annoyed. "Well, whoever you are, I need a fresh drink. The last one was warm." Renee took a slow breath. "Ma'am, I'm the captain of this aircraft." The woman's eyes flicked to Renee's uniform, and for a brief second, something like recognition crossed her face. But instead of apologizing, she laughed. Actually laughed. "Sure you are," the woman said, turning back to her phone. "Just get me the drink, okay?" Renee stood perfectly still, the trash still in her hands, her jaw tight, taking one slow breath through her nose. Several other passengers were watching now. A man across the aisle, black, mid-50s in a business suit, caught Renee's eye and shook his head in disgust. A younger white woman in 3C looked horrified. But the woman in 2A didn't care. She waved her hand dismissively without looking up, already scrolling through her emails like the interaction was beneath her attention. Renee set the glass and napkin down on the nearest empty seat. "I'll send a flight attendant to assist you," she said, her voice even. The woman didn't respond. Renee turned and walked back toward the cockpit, her hands shaking, her heart pounding. But this was only the beginning. Renee stepped into the cockpit and closed the door behind her. Daniel looked up from his pre-flight checklist. "Everything okay, Captain?" Renee sat down in the left seat and buckled in. "Fine." "You sure you look?" "I said I'm fine," Renee said, her tone sharper than she intended. Daniel went quiet. Renee took a breath. "Sorry, just passenger stuff." Daniel nodded, understood. Renee focused on her instruments, running through her checks mechanically. But her mind kept replaying the interaction. The champagne glass shoved into her hands. The dismissive wave. The laugh. "Sure you are." Like being a black female captain was some kind of joke. Renee had dealt with this her entire career. But it never got easier. A soft knock on the cockpit door. The lead flight attendant, a black woman in her 50s named Angela, poked her head in. "Captain Mitchell, can I have a word?" "Of course," Renee said. "What's up?" Angela stepped inside and closed the door. "I just had a passenger in 2A complain that some woman pretending to be the captain refused to get her a drink." Renee's jaw tightened. "She handed me her trash, assumed I was a flight attendant. I told her I was the captain. She didn't believe me." Angela's face darkened. "Are you kidding me?" "I wish I was." "Captain, I can handle her if you want. I'll make it very clear who you are." Renee shook her head. "No, I'll handle it." "How?" Renee allowed herself a small, tight smile. "You'll see." Angela studied her for a moment, then nodded. "All right, let me know if you need anything." She left. Daniel glanced at Renee. "Captain, what are you planning?" "Nothing unprofessional," Renee said. "I'm just going to make an introduction." What the passenger didn't know was who she'd just humiliated. At 2:47 p.m., the cabin crew finished boarding. The gate agent closed the aircraft door. Angela picked up the PA. "Ladies and gentlemen, we've closed the door and will be pushing back shortly. Please ensure your seatbelts are fastened and all electronic devices are in airplane mode. Thank you for flying Delta." Renee completed her final checks, coordinated with ground control, and prepared for pushback. Then she picked up the PA microphone. "Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is Captain Renee Mitchell speaking from the flight deck." In seat 2A, the blonde woman looked up sharply. Her face went pale. "I'll be your captain today for our flight to Houston," Renee continued, her voice calm and professional. "We're currently number 3 for takeoff, so we should be wheels up in about 10 minutes. Flight time today is approximately 2 hours. Weather in Houston is clear and sunny, 78 degrees. We'll be cruising at 36,000 feet." She paused. "I want to take a moment to thank our cabin crew for their hard work today, and to remind all passengers that our flight attendants are here for your safety, not to be treated as servants. They deserve your respect and courtesy." Another pause. "I'd also like to remind everyone that I'm Captain Mitchell, not Miss, not that woman, but Captain. I've been flying for 16 years, I have over 6,000 flight hours, and I'm honored to be your pilot today. If anyone has any questions about my qualifications, feel free to ask a flight attendant, and they'll be happy to provide my credentials." The cabin was dead silent. "Sit back, relax, and we'll have you in Houston in no time. Thank you for flying Delta." Renee set down the microphone. Daniel was staring at her. "Captain, that was necessary," Renee said. She didn't look back at the cabin. She didn't need to. She knew exactly what was happening back there. Angela's voice came over the intercom. "Captain, you have a standing ovation in economy." Renee allowed herself a small smile. "Copy that." The plane pushed back from the gate. If only the passenger knew what was about to happen next. The flight took off smoothly. Once they reached cruising altitude, Renee unbuckled and stood. "Daniel, you have the controls." "I have the controls," Daniel confirmed. Renee opened the cockpit door and stepped into the cabin. Angela was waiting in the galley. "Captain, that announcement was legendary." "Thanks," Renee said. "How's the passenger in 2A?" Angela's smile turned cold. "Silent. Hasn't said a word since you made that announcement. Won't even look at me." "Good," Renee said. "I'm going to do a cabin walk." "Want company?" "I'm good." Renee walked through the first-class cabin slowly. Passengers smiled at her, nodded respectfully. A few said, "Thank you, Captain." The man in the business suit, the one who'd shaken his head earlier, said, "Captain, that was the best announcement I've ever heard." "Thank you, sir," Renee said. Then she reached row 2. The blonde woman was staring out the window, her face bright red, her jaw tight. Renee stopped at her row. "Excuse me, ma'am." The woman didn't turn around. Renee waited. Finally, the woman turned her head slightly. "Yes." "I wanted to check if you needed anything," Renee said, her voice perfectly polite. "A fresh champagne, perhaps. I can ask the flight attendant to bring one." The woman's face went from red to crimson. I'm fine." "Are you sure? I remember you mentioned the last one wasn't cold enough." The woman's hands clenched in her lap. "I said I'm fine." "All right," Renee said. "Well, if you need anything, just press your call button. That's what it's there for." She walked away, her head high. Behind her, she heard the man in the business suit mutter, "She deserved that." Renee returned to the cockpit. Daniel looked at her with something like awe. "Captain, I don't know what you just did, but the passengers are loving you right now." Renee sat down and buckled in. "I just reminded someone that respect goes both ways." But here's the part that changed everything. 45 minutes into the flight, Angela knocked on the cockpit door again. Renee opened it. "What's up?" Angela's expression was strange, somewhere between amused and shocked. "Captain, you need to hear this." "Hear what?" "The passenger in 2A just tried to file a complaint. She called the customer service line from her phone." Renee's eyebrows shot up. "She what?" "She told the rep that she was being harassed by a flight attendant pretending to be the captain, and that your announcement was unprofessional and targeted." Renee's jaw dropped. "You're kidding." "I'm not. But here's the thing. The customer service rep asked for the flight number, looked it up, and told her that Captain Renee Mitchell is, in fact, the pilot of record. Then the rep asked if she wanted to rephrase her complaint. And she hung up." Renee couldn't help it, she laughed. "There's more," Angela said. "3 other passengers overheard the call. One of them, the guy in 1D, recorded part of it. He said he's willing to submit it as evidence if she tries to escalate." Renee shook her head. "This woman just can't stop digging." "Captain, do you want me to handle this?" Renee thought for a moment. "No, let it play out. If she wants to file a complaint, that's her right, but I'm not going to engage anymore." "Understood," Angela said. She hesitated. "For what it's worth, Captain, you handled that with more grace than I would have." "Thanks, Angela." Angela left. Daniel glanced at Renee. "Captain, can I ask you something?" "Sure." "How do you deal with this? I mean, I've been flying for 4 years and no one's ever questioned whether I belong in this cockpit. But this happens to you all the time, doesn't it?" Renee was quiet for a moment. "Yeah," she said finally, "it does." "That's not fair." "No, it's not, but it's reality. So I have two choices, let it break me or let it make me stronger. Daniel nodded. For what it's worth, you're the best captain I've ever flown with. Renee smiled. Thanks, Daniel, that means a lot. What the passenger didn't know was that this story was about to go viral. The plane landed in Houston without further incident. As passengers deplaned, several stopped to thank Renee personally. Captain, that was a great flight. Thank you for what you said, Captain. My daughter is studying to be a pilot, and she needs to see women like you. Captain Mitchell, you're an inspiration. Renee shook hands, smiled, thanked them. The blonde woman from 2A walked past without making eye contact, her head down, her face still red. Renee didn't say anything. She didn't need to. After the last passenger left, Renee did her post-flight checks, gathered her things, and headed to the crew lounge. Angela was waiting. Captain, you need to see this. She held up her phone. On the screen was a Twitter post from the man in 1D. Just witnessed the most graceful clapback ever. Passenger handed trash to a black woman, assuming she was a flight attendant. Turns out she was the captain. Her announcement was legendary. At Delta, promote this woman. Captain Renee Mitchell, Black Girl Magic. The post had 47,000 retweets. Renee stared at it. Oh no. Oh yes, Angela said. You're famous, Captain. Renee scrolled through the replies. Thousands of people sharing similar stories. Black women pilots, doctors, lawyers, engineers, all mistaken for assistants, secretaries, janitors. All dismissed, underestimated, disrespected, and all rallying around Renee's story. One tweet caught her eye. This happened to me when I was a surgeon. Patient asked me to empty her bedpan. I was about to perform her heart surgery. Captain Renee Mitchell is a queen. Renee closed her eyes. She'd wanted to handle this quietly. But maybe this was bigger than her. Her phone buzzed, a call from an unknown number. She answered, "This is Captain Mitchell." "Captain Mitchell, this is David Chen, VP of Flight Operations for Delta. I just saw the Twitter post." Renee's stomach dropped. "Sir, I want to commend you," David said. "What you did today was professional, dignified, and exactly what we expect from our captains. You stood up for yourself and your crew without being disrespectful. That takes real leadership." Renee exhaled. "Thank you, sir. I also want you to know, we're launching an internal review of passenger conduct policies. What that passenger did was unacceptable, and we're going to make sure our crews have better support when these situations arise." "I appreciate that, sir." "There's one more thing," David said. "We'd like you to speak at our annual leadership summit next month. We want other captains, especially our women and pilots of color, to hear your story." Renee paused. "I'm not sure I'm the right person." "You absolutely are," David said. "Think about it, but Captain Mitchell, you're exactly the kind of leader this airline needs." If only that passenger knew what she'd started. 2 weeks later, Renee stood in a hotel ballroom in Atlanta. In front of her sat 800 Delta pilots, flight attendants, and executives. She wore her dress uniform, her captain's wings gleaming. She was nervous. Public speaking had never been her strength. But she'd agreed to do this, because maybe someone in this room needed to hear it. "Good morning," she began. "My name is Captain Renee Mitchell, and 2 weeks ago a passenger handed me her trash." The room was silent. She told the story, simply, honestly, without exaggeration. She told them about the champagne glass, the dismissive laugh, the assumption that she couldn't possibly be the captain. "I've been a pilot for 16 years, Renee said. "I've logged over 6,000 hours. I've flown in combat zones, through hurricanes, and across oceans. But none of that mattered to that passenger. Because when she looked at me, she didn't see a captain. She saw a black woman, and she assumed I was there to serve." She paused. I could have stayed silent. I could have just walked away and let it go, but I didn't. Because silence sends a message that it's okay to treat people this way, that assumptions are harmless, that disrespect is tolerable. She looked around the room. It's not. Applause began tentative at first, then building. I'm not telling you this story because I want sympathy, Renee continued. I'm telling you because this happens every single day. To women, to people of color, to anyone who doesn't fit someone's narrow idea of what a pilot, a doctor, a CEO should look like. Her voice grew stronger. And I'm telling you because I want you to know you don't have to accept it. You don't have to shrink. You don't have to prove yourself to people who have already decided you don't belong. She pointed to her wings. These wings, I earned them. Every single one of you earned yours, and no one, no passenger, no colleague, no stranger gets to take that away from you. The room erupted. People stood, clapping, some wiping tears. A young black woman, a first officer, maybe 28, approached Renee after the speech. Captain Mitchell, she said, her voice shaking. Thank you. I've been flying for 2 years and I've been treated like that more times than I can count. Hearing you say it's not okay, I needed that. Renee took her hand. What's your name? Jasmine Harper. Jasmine, you belong in that cockpit just as much as anyone else. Don't ever let anyone make you feel otherwise. Jasmine nodded, tears streaming down her face. And just when Renee thought the story was over, the phone call came. 3 days later, Renee was at home in Atlanta when her phone rang. Unknown number again. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. This is Captain Mitchell. Captain Mitchell, my name is Senator Patricia Lawson. I'm calling from Washington. Renee sat up straight. Senator Lawson was a black woman from Georgia, a rising star in the Democratic Party, known for her work on civil rights. Senator, this is an honor. How can I help you? I saw your story, Senator Lawson said, and I want to invite you to testify before the Senate Committee on Commerce, Science, and Transportation. Renee blinked. Testify about what? About discrimination in the airline industry. We're holding hearings next month on workplace equity and customer conduct. Your story is exactly what we need to illustrate the challenges facing women and people of color in aviation. Senator, I'm not sure. Captain Mitchell, do you know how many black female pilots there are in this country? About 150. Out of over 155,000 total pilots, Senator Lawson said. That's less than 0.1%. And do you know why? Lots of reasons, Renee said. Access, cost, discrimination. Exactly, and your story shows all of it. Captain, you have a platform right now. People are listening. If you're willing, we can use that platform to create real change. Renee was quiet. She thought about Jasmine, the young first officer. She thought about all the black girls who dreamed of flying, but never saw anyone who looked like them in the cockpit. She thought about the passenger in 2A, and all the passengers like her, who would keep making assumptions until someone forced them to change. I'll do it, Renee said. But what happened next would change the entire industry. 1 month later, Renee sat at a witness table in a Senate hearing room. The room was packed. Senators, journalists, aviation executives, civil rights advocates. Senator Lawson sat at the center of the panel. Captain Mitchell, thank you for being here today. Can you tell the committee what happened on Delta Flight 1522? Renee told the story. When she finished, the room was silent. Then Senator Lawson said, Captain, in your professional opinion, is this an isolated incident? No, Senator, it's not. Can you elaborate? Renee took a breath. I'm a black female captain. There are only about 150 of us in the entire country, and almost every single one of us has a story like mine. We're mistaken for flight attendants, questioned about our credentials, treated like we don't belong. It happens so often that we have a name for it, flying while black. A few people in the audience nodded. And it's not just pilots, Renee continued. It's flight attendants, gate agents, mechanics, anyone who doesn't fit the stereotype of what people think an aviation professional should look like. Senator Lawson leaned forward. What would you like to see change? I'd like to see mandatory bias training for all airline staff, not just a one-time seminar, but ongoing education. I'd like to see better reporting mechanisms for discrimination, both for employees and passengers. And I'd like to see more investment in programs that bring women and people of color into aviation careers. Thank you, Captain, Senator Lawson said. Then she turned to the airline executives sitting at the other witness table. Gentlemen, you've heard Captain Mitchell's testimony. What is your industry doing to address these issues? The CEO of the Airlines for America Trade Group, a white man in his 60s, cleared his throat. Senator, we take these concerns very seriously. We're committed to diversity and inclusion. With respect, sir, commitments aren't enough, Senator Lawson interrupted. Captain Mitchell has 6,000 flight hours and 16 years of experience, and she was handed trash like a servant. That's not a training issue. That's a culture issue. The CEO shifted uncomfortably. I'm introducing legislation today, Senator Lawson continued, that will require all U.S. airlines to implement comprehensive anti-discrimination training, establish independent review boards for employee complaints, and report diversity metrics publicly every year. Captain Mitchell's story is just one example of a systemic problem, and this committee is going to fix it. The room erupted in applause. Renee sat back stunned. She just wanted to fly planes. But somehow she'd sparked a movement. But the biggest surprise was still to come. 6 months later, Renee received a letter. It was from Delta's CEO. Captain Mitchell, I want to personally thank you for your courage in sharing your story. Because of your testimony before the Senate, Delta Airlines has implemented sweeping changes to our diversity and inclusion programs. We've also established the Renee Mitchell Leadership Scholarship, a full-ride program for young women of color pursuing careers in aviation. Additionally, I'm pleased to inform you that you've been selected as Delta's new Chief Pilot for Diversity and Inclusion. In this role, you'll oversee recruitment, training, and retention programs aimed at increasing representation across all areas of our flight operations. You didn't just fly a plane that day, Captain. You changed an industry. Thank you. Sincerely, Ed Bastian, CEO, Delta Airlines. Renee read the letter 3 times. Then she called her mother. Mama, you're not going to believe this. Try me, baby. Renee told her. Her mother was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, Renee, do you remember when you were 7 years old and you told me you wanted to be a pilot? Yeah. And do you remember what I said? Renee smiled. You said, baby, the sky is just the beginning. That's right, and look at you now. You're not just flying, you're leading. Renee wiped her eyes. I love you, Mama. I love you too, baby, and I'm so proud of you. Epilogue. The passenger from seat 2A never came forward publicly. But 3 months after the incident, she sent an anonymous letter to Delta's corporate office. I am writing to apologize for my behavior on Flight 1522. I was rude, dismissive, and disrespectful to Captain Mitchell. I made assumptions based on her race and gender, and I was wrong. I've spent the past 3 months in therapy, trying to understand my own biases. I know this apology doesn't undo the harm I caused, but I want Captain Mitchell to know that her grace changed me. I'm trying to be better. Renee never responded to the letter. But she kept it, as a reminder that even the people who hurt us can grow. The Renee Mitchell Leadership Scholarship, awarded its first 10 scholarships the following year, all to young black women pursuing pilots' licenses. Jasmine Harper, the young first officer who'd cried at Renee's speech, became one of Delta's youngest captains at age 31. And Renee, she continued to fly. Because she loved it. But now she flew with a new purpose, not just to reach a destination, but to open doors for everyone who came after her. Renee's victory wasn't just about one passenger's humiliation. It was proof that when you refuse to shrink, when you stand tall in your truth, when you use your voice even when it shakes, you don't just change your own story. You change the world. When they try to hand you trash, hand them truth. When they assume you're small, show them how vast you really are. And when they think you're just passing through, remind them you're the one flying the plane. Because sometimes, the person they underestimate is the one who changes everything. Be honest, if someone handed you trash like that, would you have stayed as composed as Captain Mitchell? Or would you have confronted them immediately? Drop your answer in the comments. And if you believe that every person, regardless of race, gender, or appearance, deserves to be seen for who they truly are, hit that like button and share this story. I'm C. Tales, and I'll see you in the next one.